My husband's first love jumped off a building because of depression. He was furious and dragged me to a deserted amusement park. I was 8 months pregnant at the time, and he tied me to the bungee jumping machine, cold and heartless. His men stood by and tied my hands and feet to the cold metal seat with expressionless faces. If you hadn't angered Sienna, would she have collapsed and jumped off the building? He asked me coldly. I was so scared of heights that I held on to my seatbelt tightly, and my belly was so swollen that I couldn't breathe. I cried and admitted my mistake, begging him hoarsely, "Joe, please, let me go. I promised, I swear, I will never appear in front of Sienna again." But he just looked at me indifferently. "Ava, for the sake of the children, I will not divorce you." His voice was terrifyingly calm, even with a hint of tenderness, but the next words were chilling. "But the pain you brought to Sienna, I want you to pay it back 100-fold. No, 1,000-fold." He ordered the bungee jumping machine to run continuously for an hour, and then left without looking back. As the machine gradually rose, the roar became louder and louder, and the seat began to shake. I struggled desperately and screamed until my throat was sore. Every time the machine descended, my stomach turned upside down and the fear almost made me faint. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain, as if something was tearing inside me, and a warm liquid gushed out from between my legs, soaking my clothes and the seat. The next day, Hugh finally remembered that I was still tied there. "Ava, Sienna is fine now," he said, without a trace of worry in his tone. "As long as you apologize to her, I will let you go." He didn't know, they didn't know, the platform had been soaked in blood for hours. My child left before he could see the world. Dr. Jason called this morning and said that the woman was avoiding prenatal checkups again. What tricks is she trying to use to get my attention this time? Zio frowned, with a hint of disgust in her eyes. Mason, the butler, was pale and his voice was trembling. "Sir, my wife is still on the jumping platform. She has a severe fear of heights and doesn't even dare to go up to the balcony on the second floor. She is already in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy." Could it be? Could something have happened? Zio's expression froze for a moment, then he frowned again, a hint of doubt flashing across his face. "Really? Ava is afraid of heights?" Without waiting for Mason to answer, Quinn waved his hand. "It's just a jumping machine, not a real jump from a building. Give her a scare. Maybe it can teach her a lesson, so she won't bully Sienna again in the future." Mason lowered his head and dared not speak again. However, Zio's assistant couldn't help but said, "Sir, the lady was screaming at first, but then she became silent, and she is pregnant with your child, your own flesh and blood. Shouldn't you go see her?" Zio's expression changed slightly, but that moment of sudden realization was quickly replaced by contempt. I knew it. Her so-called fear of heights was just pretending. If she was really that scared, why would she suddenly stop talking? Ava is still so calculating. Since she wants to pretend, let her stay there until dawn. Tomorrow I will take her to kneel down in front of Sienna to apologize, and this matter will be settled. After that, he waved his hand impatiently, no longer paying attention to the other party's protests, and strode towards the bedroom. On his bed, Sienna lay half-naked under the soft sheets, her delicate shoulders exposed in the dim light. As Hugh approached, his eyes darkened, his Adam's apple rolling up and down with desire. Without saying a word, he leaned over and kissed her lips deeply. Sienna whimpered softly, pressing her fingers weakly against his chest, and then opened her eyes. "Hugh, we're in your room. Ava would be upset if she found out." Her voice trembled, her eyes were full of guilt and hesitation. "As for what happened before, Joe, I did it only because I loved you so much. I thought if I died, Ava would stop arguing with you for me. I never thought that you punished her for me. Should I go and apologize to her?" She bit her lip, looking heartbroken and conflicted. Sure enough, seeing her like this, Zio's desire and anger intertwined. He roughly kneaded Sienna's soft breasts with his big hands. His breathing became rapid, and he easily turned her over. "Sienna, you're so polite. If it weren't for you, I would have died. Even your fear of heights is because you saved me. It hurts me just to think about how Ava could let someone as gentle and kind as you jump off a building." He held Sienna tightly, his voice low, as if whispering, "If she does it again, even if she's pregnant with my child, I'll make her pay with her life." Hugh tenderly kissed the slight scratches on Sienna's delicate skin, the marks left by her fall. His usually cold and elusive eyes softened with pain, as if seeing her hurt expression broke his heart. In our bed, the two of them were immersed in passion, their bodies entangled under the sheets. Above them, the wedding photo swayed slightly with the camera. I stared at the photo, at myself looking at Hugh with all the love in the world, and his face, even at that moment, looked impassive. It wasn't until then that I realized even souls can shed tears. At least Hugh can rest assured now. I can't come between them anymore, because I'm already dead. When Hugh first came for me, I was terrified and tried to run away. My 8 months pregnant belly made it almost impossible to escape, but I stumbled forward anyway, desperate. He stood there, arms crossed, watching me run aimlessly like a cornered animal. In the end, it was no use. His bodyguards easily caught me and dragged me back. Hugh lost his patience and forced me onto the cold seat of the drop tower ride. He used his hands to hold me down until thick straps and ropes bound my limbs in place. I screamed and pleaded, my voice growing hoarse as the ride began to lift me higher and higher. I was still screaming when I felt a warm liquid run down my legs. My water had broken. I sobbed and gasped, begging my husband to save our baby. For a moment, I saw a hint of hesitation in his eyes, but before hope emerged, a soft voice came from beside him. Sienna leaned against him, looking pale and pitiful. "I thought Ava wasn't due until next week, but she did look scared. She even wet herself before going on the ride. Maybe we should just leave her alone. I'm fine now anyway." That was enough. The next moment, Zio's expression was twisted with disgust. "Ava, you're so mean. Using our child to gain my sympathy? Stay there and think about what you did." 100 meters high, a howling wind cut through my thin dress like a knife. My teeth couldn't stop chattering, but the pain in my abdomen became even worse. The baby is about to be born. I struggled against the ropes, which cut into my wrists until the skin peeled off. Blood dripped down my arms, but I didn't stop. My fingers clawed at the knot until, somehow, it began to loosen. On my third upward dash, I used up the last of my strength, and just then I heard a fragile, kitten-like cry. My child was born in the sky. I was too weak to hold it, too weak to even see if it was a boy or a girl. Before I could reach out, the ride jolted violently. The tower reached its peak once more. The next second, it fell. The tiny, fragile body was ripped from my arms. My baby, so small, so helpless, fell to the unforgiving ground below. I reached for it, screaming until my throat gave out, but my shredded hands could not hold it, and I could only watch as that perfect little life crumbled to blood on the cold concrete. My blood flowed out, dyeing the air crimson like the death snow in midsummer. I lost my breath in one final scream of agony. Where is Hugh? He didn't come close to me. Instead, he summoned summoned the best doctors in the city, not for me, not for our baby, but for Sienna. All because he didn't want a shallow scratch on her arm to leave a scar. He brought her fresh roses, carefully selected from a florist who had imported them from half a world away, and he even bought her a one-of-a-kind designer necklace, which he gently placed in her hands to soothe her fragile nerves. When someone tried to report to me what had happened, Hugh stopped them without hesitation. Even if she died, it was her own fault, he said emotionlessly. She's due in 2 days. I'll bring Ava over to apologize to you, Hugh said, languidly running his fingers through Sienna's hair as she curled up in his lap. Sienna rubbed soft circles on his chest with her slender fingers and gently leaned her head against him. Maybe we should just forget about it, she whispered, her voice soft and full of guilt. I'm sure Ava didn't mean it. Ultimately, this is my fault, I shouldn't have come back. But I just wanted to be with you. I never meant to cause any trouble for either of you. Zio held her wavering hand, his voice unbearably gentle. Sienna, you saved my life. For that, I will protect you until the day I die. He gently brushed her hair back, his eyes loving. Ava is my wife. She should have embraced you with me, but she has been targeting you and pushing you into a corner. His jaw was slightly clenched, and there was a hint of anger in his soft words. I can't even imagine if the firefighters hadn't rescued you in time, I might have lost you forever. I will never forgive myself. Hearing Zio's words, a trace of uneasiness flashed across Sienna's delicate face. She winced slightly, curling her fingers into his shirt, and fell silent. Bitterness welled up in me, a feeling so familiar that it almost comforted me now. Half a year ago, Sienna suddenly returned home after living abroad for many years. Hugh told me she was alone and had nowhere to go. He took her home without even consulting me, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. At first, I didn't mind. I even felt sorry for this fragile girl and did everything I could to take care of her, cooking for her, making sure she had warm clothes, trying to make her feel welcome. I want to be nice to her. I want to be a good wife. Until that night, when everything changed. Sienna picked up a glass of red wine, poured it on herself, then knelt down in front of me, trembling and begging for mercy. Her voice was so soft, so pitiful, that anyone passing by would have thought I had been torturing her for days. From that moment on, the way Hugh looked at me changed. That night, he didn't even give me a chance to explain. His rage exploded like a storm, and before I could react, I was dragged to the attic and locked up. He left me there, hungry and cold, for 3 days. When he finally came back, his voice was colder than I had ever heard. Ava, you really disappoint me, he said, his eyes full of disgust. You have no idea what Sienna means to me. If you dare to touch her again, even if you are my wife, I will make you pay the price. It was a series of incidents, carefully planned episodes in which Sienna was the victim and I was the cruel villain, that gradually wore away Hugh's patience until he could never look at me without cold contempt. I had planned to be patient, at least until the baby was born. Once our child was safely born, I would file for divorce and quietly leave. But before I could do that, Sienna jumped off the building. What was the reason for her suicide? Hateful messages and vicious recordings, supposedly from me. This sentence was cruel enough to drive anyone to despair. But it was not what I said. However, no matter how I pleaded, Hugh did not believe me. He could only see Sienna lying on the hospital bed, pale, trembling, tears falling drop by drop. He felt heartbroken for her, and his eyes were red and swollen with anger. Even with our child on the way, his only concern was avenging his beloved. Sir, madam, she seems, you should go and see it for yourself. Zio's fingers froze on the pen in his hand. He frowned, his expression both angry and indifferent. She's still angry after all this time? The assistant hesitated, clasping his hands nervously together for several seconds before finally speaking. No, sir, it's not like that. It's just, madam seems to have stopped breathing. Hugh's large hands, the same ones that had held Sienna so tenderly just a moment ago, were now frozen. For a moment, there was silence, too long to be casual, too short to have any real meaning. Then, a cold, careless laugh broke from his throat. Is she really going to do this to get out of apologizing? Faking her death, just to avoid facing Sienna? His voice sharpened. Tell her, even if it means she dies, that she must apologize. If she refuses, don't say I didn't warn her. The assistant's forehead was covered with sweat. He wanted to say something, but seeing the anger on Zio's face, he couldn't speak, and finally could only retreat silently. In Zio's arms, Sienna tilted her head, her innocent eyes full of worry. Hugh, maybe you should let go, she whispered. Even if Ava doesn't like me and makes trouble, she's still your wife. As long as I can be with you, I can tolerate it. Quinn's arms tightened around her slender waist, pulling her closer to him. Sienna, you don't have to be afraid of that stingy woman. Ava is not worth your care at all. His voice softened. This time, I will let her learn a lesson. Only in this way will she understand her position. But, no buts, just trust me. A teardrop fell on the back of my hand, extremely cold but more hurtful than any blade. Only then did I realize that I had cried. So even the soul feels pain. Hugh said nothing more after that, but his mind was elsewhere all afternoon. His fingers drummed on the table, and every few minutes his eyes would glance toward the door. In an hour, he had already glanced at it a dozen times. Finally, he sighed in frustration and closed his laptop. He ran his hands through his hair, a gentle smile on his face as he stroked Sienna's hair. I don't know what Ava is up to this time, he said softly, but I'm going to drag her back here to apologize right now. Arriving at the entrance of the amusement park, Hugh strode forward, his anxiety radiating from him like a heat wave. Even from a distance, his sharp eyes were fixed on the bungee jumping machine. Its body gleamed coldly in the sun, but the ground beneath it was soaked in red. The air was filled with a strong smell of blood, mixed with a faint smell of rust and damp earth. Hugh instinctively raised a hand to cover his nose, with an uncomfortable expression on his face. What the hell is that smell? What the hell is Ava doing this time? His voice was impatient, as if this was just another childish prank of mine. His assistant stood by, sweat beads on his forehead. His hands were clenched nervously, but his voice was low. Sir, maybe you should go and see it yourself. The assistant stepped aside stiffly, revealing two figures lying side by side on the blood-stained ground, both covered with white cloths, one larger, the other heartbreakingly smaller. Zio's big hand hung hesitantly between the two of them. His fingers stretched and retracted, and a hint of hesitation flashed across his face. He frowned, and a hint of confusion flashed in his usually cold eyes. I clutched my chest, even though there was no heartbeat there, only the empty pain of something long gone. I knew what was coming next, and the knowledge choked me, but I couldn't look away. After what seemed like an eternity, Zio finally reached out to the smaller piece of cloth. His fingers trembled slightly as he grasped the edge of the cloth and slowly lifted it up. Before he could see anything, a sharp scream cut through the air. Xiao, what are you doing? You're not really going to touch that, are you? That's the body of a wildcat. Sienna screamed, stumbling towards him, shaking and throwing herself into his arms, her face pressed against his chest, her tiny hands clutching his shirt tightly. Hugh's body froze at her touch, but her words seemed to flip a switch in him. His expression darkened, and a flash of disgust crossed his face. Without a second thought, he kicked the small package away. The tiny body tumbled limply across the sidewalk, the once pure white fabric opening slightly to reveal soft, fragile skin. "Call the dogs," Hugh called, his voice cold and sharp. "Let them handle this." The order was carried out immediately. The stray dogs, attracted by the smell of flesh and blood, swarmed over within seconds. Without hesitation, they tore at the small corpse with their teeth, low growls intertwined with the wet, sickening sound of tearing flesh. I screamed, the sound escaping me like a wounded animal. I lunged forward, trying to grab Hugh, trying to push the dog away, trying to grab what was left of my child, but my hands passed right through it all. I can't touch anything. I can't stop anything. But the pain, oh, the pain was real. It seared my body and pierced my heart 1,000 times more than the pain of childbirth. What did I do wrong? What did my child do wrong? The dogs chased until only rags and wet black spots were left on the ground. When the last piece of meat disappeared, I caught a glimpse of Sienna standing a little distance away from Hugh. A faint smile appeared at the corner of her mouth, a sinister light flashed in her eyes, and then she quickly lowered her head. "Stop playing these games." Hugh's roar broke the silence. "Where is Ava? Where the hell is she hiding?" His fists clenched at his sides, veins popping out under his skin. "She forced Sienna to jump off the building, and now she wants to scare her with a dead cat? How come I didn't see how cruel Ava is?" He turned around, his tone full of contempt. "Ava, don't you love that child more than anything? If you don't crawl out of here right now, I swear, when the Real baby is born, I will divorce you on the spot. Forget about getting custody. You will never see that child again." I collapsed to the ground, shaking with rage and heartbreak. Silent laughter mingled with tears I could no longer wipe away. My parents were gone. Hugh, a man I had trusted with my whole heart, had betrayed me without a second thought for Sienna. All I had left was my child. And now, my child, our child, was being torn apart by dogs and thrown away like garbage while that child's father stood by and did nothing. There was not even a corpse left. I swear from the bottom of my soul that Hugh will go to hell for this. He roared again, loud and furious, demanding that I show myself. But no one answered him. Finally, the pale, trembling assistant forced himself to step forward. With shaking hands, he slowly lifted the white cloth covering the huge body. His voice was trembling. "Sir, madam is right here. And your child, you just fed it to a stray dog."